Hi there, it's Robin with Care 7, and today we're going to go over some techniques to help calm and restore the body, to help calm and bring a sense of ease if we're feeling unsafe or anxious. So if you've seen some of these videos that I've done in the past, you've probably heard me talk about trauma response as well as the importance of things like basic breathing. If you hadn't had a chance to check out those videos yet, please feel free to do so because they'll be a really nice complement to what we're going to do today. But just a really basic recap for you. The body is really important in healing from chronic stress or from a traumatic event, because when we go through a lot of stress or when we go through trauma, the body is really what works on behalf of our survival. And when the body moves into that survival mode, it kind of pauses our emotional regulation, which happens in the middle of the brain, sort of, and our what we call executive functioning. It's a fancy name, but the reasoning and cognition and ability to think and process in the front of our brain. So those systems go on hold for this lower part of the brain, which is related to our survival. And it's really good that we have this lower part of the brain because it gets us through stressful and challenging and threatening events. But oftentimes what happens in a state of trauma is that part of the brain gets stuck. And so much of the healing journey is about unsticking that part of the brain, turning the switch, that threat reader switch down, and letting the brain kind of stabilize and return so that that fight or flight response is calm, so that our emotions can be received, expressed, accessed more accurately and not from a state of threat, and so that our thoughts can come back online and we can actually start to think about things in a more growth-oriented or productive way. So the body is really super helpful and powerful in initiating this process. However, the body also needs to be reminded that it is safe. And so these techniques that we're going to learn today are going to help remember the body, or help the body remember what safety feels like. And they're going to be really good techniques for when you're feeling unsafe, when something's coming up that's creating a little bit of angst or a little bit of worry, or if it's creating a little bit of that kind of on the edge feeling of vigilance, hypervigilance, being on guard. Okay, so I'm gonna first start with what's called a tapping exercise. There are a lot of different types of tapping. I'm gonna go over some very basic tapping today. As always, we want to keep our home practices and our home self-care super basic. We don't want to overcomplicate it, and we want it to be accessible for what we're doing on our own. So the first is going to be to just, have a seat in a chair or a table, and then you want to bring your feet, scoot back a little bit, about hip distance apart, and really root the four corners of the feet down, or as much of your foot down as you can, and scoot to the edge of the chair so that you can have a nice upright spine. So we don't want to have a rounded spine, but if we can get a little bit more open so that we have that better breath capacity, that's going to be ideal. And then what we can do is, let's say hypothetically you're feeling really angsty or nervous or kind of restless, and your body is kind of buzzing like a hummingbird or a bee, and you want to start to calm that. You're just going to take your palms to the thighs, again, feet on the ground, and you're going to go back and forth. And you can't see my feet, but I'm lifting my toes. So my feet are lifting as my hands are. Now, the reality is, if you're really stressed, it might be a very irregular pattern, it might be all over the place, and that's okay, because it's going to let our mind focus on regulating the movement. So if it's all over the place, then just start really bringing all of your attention to the process of tapping. And then we want to tap with the breath. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And we want to try to find a steady cadence, a nice, smooth, steady cadence. Delicate rhythm, And just literally making contact of palm to thigh, foot to ground, and a mindful breathing in and a mindful breathing out. And what this, as well as the other body-based techniques that we're going to learn, what this does is it gets us into the present moment. So the mind has this extraordinary yet inconvenient and rather annoying capacity to wander to the past and to wander to the future and to disengage and to not be present. The body, however, keeps us securely anchored in the here and the now. So when the mind is worrying or ruminating or having angst, it can be really hard to pull it back in. So we draw our attention to the body, that material, tangible thing that allows us to be present and engaged in the moment. Okay? And that tapping, this tapping that we're doing here, is one way of doing it. So this is great if you don't have the space to stand up. If you're, at work or you need to do this under your desk, you can do it a little bit more quietly. If you have the capacity to tap while standing, I really recommend that, because standing allows us to occupy space a little bit more, which is really good for our self-empowerment work. So when you're standing, the same thing, you can tap on the thighs, the side of the thigh. You can tap on the front of the thigh. Okay. If you're feeling really, really unsafe or extra nervous, cross right palm to left shoulder, left palm to right shoulder, and then you're going to tap there as well. Just gentle tapping. And then the last element of tapping that I'm going to introduce today is a tap with a sway. Okay, and this is just adding, a lot easier to do in standing than it is seated, obviously, but adding a swaying. Tapping and swaying. And then one more little feature to this, it's going to seem a little silly, but I'll explain why we do it in a moment. You can begin to incorporate with the swaying and with the tapping S sounds or shushing sounds. And what's really cool about this is it's a biological and evolutionary technique that helps soothe and calm. What do we do with babies when they cry, right? We pick them up, we tap, we bump them on the butt, we tap and we sway. It's a scientifically and evolutionary method of calming that part of the brain that needs soothing. So we can do the same thing as adults. You can cross the arms. Crossing the arms is a protective measure. It's a healthy boundary. It's saying this is my space and I'm safe. Tapping is getting us into the body. And to be a kind of a science geek, I won't bore you with all of the detail, but tapping helps the sides of our brain communicate. And when we stimulate those sides of the brain, it again helps take us out of this lizard brain back here. Okay, so you can do this tapping preventatively. You can do it in the morning, in the noon, in the evening to just help your nervous system regulate. You can do it when you're feeling really stressed or again, that hypervigilance state comes up. So basic tapping, cross arm tapping, tapping seated seated with the feet on the floor, or tapping standing and swaying. Sometimes swaying the arms as well, like this, can be a good way to kind of discharge stress and energy, and also very calming. Another protective and safety-oriented measure is to just kind of embrace yourself. So you're going to take your right palm underneath the left armpit, and hopefully it's not as sweaty as mine is right now. And then the left palm just gently at the edge of that right arm. And you can just do a gentle sway.